The morning ritual. Gabriel Winters adjusted his platinum cufflinks as he stepped out of his private elevator on the 42nd floor of Winters Technologies. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble lobby, where employees scattered, like leaves in wind whenever he appeared. At 28, Gabriel had built a tech empire worth billions. But his reputation for being impossible to work with was equally legendary. His assistant's desk sat empty again. The nameplate still read Jennifer Walsh. But Jennifer had lasted exactly 9 days before storming out yesterday, tears streaming down her face. She was the 7th secretary in 3 months. Gabriel's standards were impossibly high, his patience non-existent, and his tongue sharp enough to cut through steel. "Another one bites the dust," muttered Harrison Blake, Gabriel's business partner and closest friend, as he approached with a coffee in hand. Harrison was everything Gabriel wasn't: warm, approachable, and genuinely liked by their employees. That's a new record. 9 days. I think Susan lasted 10 back in February. Gabriel didn't look up from his phone as he strode toward his corner office. If people can't handle basic professional standards, they shouldn't waste my time. Basic professional standards? Harrison laughed, falling into step beside him. You made Jennifer rewrite the same report 6 times because you didn't like the font spacing. Then you criticized her for wearing blue shoes with a black dress. Attention to detail matters in business, Gabriel replied coldly. Something you seem to forget when you're being everyone's favorite uncle. Harrison shook his head as they reached Gabriel's office door. The space beyond was pristine, almost sterile in its perfection. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, while minimalist furniture and cutting-edge technology created an atmosphere that was more intimidating than welcoming. The interview process, by noon. 3 candidates had already fled the building after their interviews with Gabriel. First, a perfectly qualified woman with 15 years of experience, left after Gabriel questioned whether her previous employers had adequately prepared her for real work. The second candidate, a recent graduate with glowing references, didn't make it past Gabriel's critique of her handwriting on the application form. The third candidate, a middle-aged man who had worked for Fortune 500 companies, actually stood up during the interview and said, "Sir, with all due respect, I've worked for demanding bosses before, but I've never encountered someone who seems to take pleasure in making others miserable." "Good day!" Gabriel barely looked up from his computer as the man left. He had work to do, deals to close, and competitors to crush. He didn't have time for people who couldn't handle pressure. The unexpected arrival at 3 o'clock when Gabriel was beginning to think he'd have to handle his own correspondence for the rest of the week. There was a soft knock on his door. He didn't bother looking up as he called, "Enter." The sound of papers scattering across the floor made him glance up from his screen. A young woman was on her hands and knees, frantically trying to gather what appeared to be her resume and references, from where they had spilled across his expensive Persian rug. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice slightly breathless. "The wind from the air conditioning caught them right as I walked in. I should have been more careful." Gabriel watched in amazement as she continued to crawl around his office floor, her shoulder-length auburn hair falling across her face as she collected the papers. She was wearing a simple navy dress that was professional but not expensive, and when she finally stood up, her cheeks were flushed with embarrassment. "Are you quite finished with your floor show?" Gabriel asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The woman straightened her shoulders and met his gaze directly. Her eyes were a striking green, and despite her obvious mortification, there was a spark of determination in them that surprised him. "Yes, sir. I'm Melody Carter, and I'm here about the executive assistant position." Gabriel leaned back in his leather chair, already forming the words to dismiss her. No one this clumsy could possibly meet his standards. But something about the way she stood there, papers still slightly crumpled in her hands, chin raised despite her embarrassing entrance, made him pause. "Sit," he said instead. Gesturing to the chair across from his desk, Melody carefully placed her papers on the edge of his desk and sat down, her posture straight despite her obvious nervousness. Gabriel picked up her resume, noting immediately that it was printed on standard copy paper rather than the high-quality stock he preferred. "Melody Carter," he read aloud, his tone making her name sound like an accusation. 26 years old, associate degree in business administration. Previous experience includes working as a receptionist at a dental office and a part-time position at a coffee shop. He looked up at her with barely concealed disdain. Hardly the background I'd expect for someone applying to work at a billion-dollar corporation. "You're right," Melody said quietly. "I don't have the same credentials as the other candidates probably did, but I'm willing to learn, and I don't give up easily." No. Gabriel almost smiled at her naivety. "Miss Carter, do you have any idea what this position entails?" "You would be responsible for managing my calendar, which includes meetings with Fortune 500 CEOs, international conference calls at all hours, and events where a single mistake could cost this company millions of dollars." "I understand the stakes are high," Melody replied, her voice growing steadier. "But everyone starts somewhere. Even you must have had your first job once." The audacity of her statement should have infuriated him. Instead, Gabriel found himself oddly intrigued. When was the last time someone had spoken to him so directly without fear or calculation? "The first challenge, very well," Gabriel said, surprising himself. "Let's see how you handle a simple task. I need you to reschedule my meeting with the Morrison Group from Thursday at 2 to Friday at 9:30 in the morning. You'll need to contact their offices, confirm the change works with their schedule, and update the conference room reservation. You have 20 minutes. Melody nodded and stood up. "Where should I work on this?" "The desk outside my office."
"Oh, Jennifer's thanks."
"Should be cleared out by now." Gabriel watched through the glass walls of his office as Melody settled at the assistant's desk. She picked up the phone and began dialing, her brow furrowed in concentration. He couldn't hear what she was saying, but he could see her taking notes, nodding, and occasionally gesturing as she spoke. 15 minutes later, she knocked on his door again. "Come in," Gabriel called, expecting to hear that she had failed to reach the Morrison Group or that there had been some complication. "The meeting has been rescheduled for Friday at 9:30, Melody reported. The Morrison Group confirmed that the time works perfectly with their schedule. "I've updated the conference room reservation for the Sapphire Room. I took the liberty of arranging for refreshments since it's now a morning meeting. I also noticed that you have a conference call with the Tokyo office at 10:15, so I moved that back to 10:45 to give you time between meetings." Gabriel stared at her. The task that should have been simple had apparently been completed not only efficiently but with additional considerations he hadn't even thought of. "How did you know about the Tokyo call?" "I saw it on the calendar system." "When I logged in to make the room reservation," Melody explained, "I hope that was all right. Didn't want you to be rushed between meetings." For the first time in months, Gabriel was speechless. Every other assistant he'd hired had needed detailed instructions for the simplest tasks. Most of them would have needed help just figuring out how to access the calendar system. "That will be all for now," he said finally, as Melody turned to leave. She stumbled slightly, catching herself against the doorframe. Gabriel's brief moment of approval evaporated. "Try not to break anything on your way out," he said coldly. The decision that evening, Gabriel sat in his office long after most of the building had emptied. The city lights sparkled below him as he reviewed Melody's work from the afternoon. She had made 3 small typos in the follow-up emails she'd sent, but the substance of her work was solid. More than solid, actually. It was thoughtful and thorough. In a way he hadn't expected, Harrison appeared in his doorway, loosening his tie after a long day. "So, how did the afternoon interviews go?" Harrison asked, settling into the chair across from Gabriel's desk. "Please tell me someone survived your charm offensive." "There was one candidate," Gabriel said carefully. "Melody Carter." And Gabriel hesitated. On paper, Melody was completely wrong for the position. She lacked experience, polish, and the kind of sophisticated background he typically required. But there had been something about her performance that afternoon, something that suggested hidden depths beneath her clumsy exterior. "She's completely unsuitable," Gabriel said finally. "Is clumsy, inexperienced, doesn't have the right background." Harrison raised an eyebrow. But she completed a complex scheduling task in 15 minutes and anticipated problems I hadn't even considered."
"Oh."
"So you're hiring her?" Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. Every logical part of his mind said to keep looking, to find someone more appropriate. Something about Melody's determined green eyes and her refusal to be completely intimidated by him made him curious to see what would happen. "I'm giving her a trial period," he said finally. 1 week. "If she can survive that long, we'll see." Harrison grinned. Want to make it interesting? I bet you $5,000 she lasts more than a week. Gabriel looked at his friend with amusement. Harrison always saw the best in people, often to his own detriment. You're betting against me? The man who made Jennifer Walsh cry 3 times in one day? I'm betting on her, Harrison corrected. There's a difference. Gabriel considered the wager. In his experience, nice people didn't last long in the corporate world. They got eaten alive by those who were willing to be ruthless. Melody Carter, with her spilled papers and stuttered apologies, seemed like exactly the kind of person who would crumble under real pressure. You're on, Gabriel said, reaching across the desk to shake Harrison's hand. $5,000. Says she's gone within a week. As Harrison left, Gabriel turned back to the windows overlooking the city. Tomorrow would be interesting. He had hired Melody Carter more out of curiosity than conviction, but now he found himself oddly invested. In the outcome, would she prove to be another in his long line of inadequate assistants? Or was there something different about the clumsy young woman who had crawled across his office floor to gather her scattered papers? Only time would tell, but Gabriel had to admit that for the first time in months, he was actually looking forward to going to work in the morning. Even if it was just to prove Harrison wrong about his latest misguided bet on human nature. The city lights twinkled below as Gabriel finally gathered his things and headed home, unaware that his carefully ordered world was about to be turned completely upside down by a stubborn young woman who refused to give up, no matter how impossible he tried to make her job. The first week Survival Melody's first official day at Winters Technologies began at 7 in the morning, an hour before Gabriel typically arrived. She had spent the weekend studying everything she could find about the company, its major clients, and Gabriel's preferences from the notes Jennifer had left behind. The previous assistant's handwriting was shaky, as if written under stress, but the information was invaluable. When Gabriel stepped off the elevator at exactly 8 o'clock, he found his desk already organized with the day's priority files, his coffee waiting at the perfect temperature, and a neatly typed schedule that included not just his meetings, but relevant background information for each appointment. Good morning, Mr. Winters, Melody said as he approached. She was wearing a different dress today, this one a soft gray that complemented her auburn hair, which she had pulled back into a professional bun. Your first meeting is with the Henderson Technologies team at 9. I've prepared briefing materials on their recent product launches and noted that their CEO prefers mineral water to coffee. Gabriel picked up the briefing folder, expecting to find some glaring error he could criticize. Instead, he discovered a comprehensive overview that would have taken his previous assistant's hours to compile. How did you know about Henderson's? Water preference. I called their office yesterday and spoke with their assistant, Melody explained. I thought it might be helpful to understand their preferences for the meeting. Gabriel nodded curtly and disappeared into his office, but internally, he was surprised. The level of preparation exceeded anything his previous assistants had provided, yet Melody had made it look effortless. The morning proceeded smoothly until 10:30, when Gabriel heard a crash from the outer office. He looked up to see Melody on her knees again, this time surrounded by scattered files and what appeared to be the contents of someone's coffee cup. I'm so sorry, she was saying to a man in an expensive suit who was standing over her, his shirt splattered with coffee. I was trying to get out of your way when you turned. And this shirt costs more than you'd probably make in a week, the man snapped. Gabriel recognized him as Richard Blackwell, a notoriously difficult client who owned a chain of luxury hotels. Gabriel emerged from his office, ready to smooth over the situation and probably fire Melody on the spot. But before he could speak, he heard Melody's voice, quiet but steady. You're absolutely right, Mr. Blackwell. The shirt probably does cost more than my weekly salary. I've already called our dry cleaning service and they'll have it looking like new by this afternoon. I've also taken the liberty of ordering you a replacement from Nordstrom in the same size and color, which will be delivered within the hour. Blackwell looked taken aback. You did what? I noticed the brand and style when the coffee spilled. Melody continued, standing up and brushing off her dress. I have an eye for detail, even when I'm being clumsy. The replacement will be here before your lunch meeting, and if it doesn't fit perfectly, we'll have it tailored immediately. Gabriel watched in amazement as Blackwell's anger transformed into grudging respect. The man was used to people cowering before him, not taking charge of solutions. Well, Blackwell said finally, that's actually quite efficient. Thank you. Miss Carter. Melody Carter. And again, I'm deeply sorry for the accident. After Blackwell left, Gabriel approached Melody's desk. She was already cleaning up the scattered files, her movements quick and precise despite her obvious embarrassment. "That was an expensive mistake," Gabriel said coldly. Melody looked up at him, her green eyes steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. "Yes, sir. I'll pay for the shirt replacement myself. It'll take a few weeks, but I'll cover the cost." Gabriel felt an unexpected pang of something he couldn't quite identify. The shirt probably cost more than Melody made in a month, yet she was willing to take responsibility without complaint or excuse. "That won't be necessary," he said curtly. "The company will handle it. Just try to be more careful." As he turned back toward his office, he caught a glimpse of Melody's expression, surprise and gratitude mixed with determination. It was a look that stayed with him for the rest of the day. The growing tension by Thursday of her first week, Melody had survived longer than Gabriel's last 3 assistants combined. She had successfully managed a crisis when the caterer for an important client dinner canceled at the last minute. Finding a replacement that actually provided better service, she had caught an error in a contract that would have cost the company thousands of dollars. And she had somehow managed to get Gabriel's dry cleaning delivered on time despite a citywide traffic jam, but she had also spilled water on important documents twice, accidentally hung up on a conference call with investors when trying to transfer it, gotten lost in the building while trying to deliver files to the legal department. Gabriel found himself in a strange state of constant irritation. Mixed with reluctant admiration, Melody's mistakes were genuine accidents, not the result of carelessness or incompetence. And for every clumsy moment, she demonstrated a level of dedication and quick thinking that impressed him despite his determination to remain unimpressed. Thursday evening, as most of the office was emptying out, Gabriel was still at his desk when he heard soft music coming from the outer office. He looked up to see Melody still at her desk working on what appeared to be a complex spreadsheet while humming quietly to herself. "Miss Carter," he called out. "What are you still doing here?" Melody looked up, startled. "Oh, I'm sorry. Was I being too loud?" "I was just organizing the client contact database. I noticed some of the information was outdated, so I've been calling to verify addresses and contact details." Gabriel glanced at his watch. It was nearly 8 o'clock. That task wasn't urgent. It could have waited until tomorrow. "I know," Melody said, saving her work and beginning to shut down her computer. "But I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for tomorrow's presentation. I know how important the Morrison Group meeting is." Gabriel studied her face, looking for signs of the sucking up or calculated flattery he was used to from employees. Instead, he saw only genuine concern for doing her job well. "Go home, Miss Carter. The database will still be there tomorrow." As Melody gathered her things, Gabriel noticed she was limping slightly. "Are you injured?" Melody looked down at her. Feet embarrassed. "My shoes are just a little tight. I'm still breaking them in." Gabriel found himself noticing details about Melody that he had never paid attention to with other employees. Her shoes were clearly inexpensive, but well-maintained. Her clothes were simple, but always clean and pressed. She carried a worn leather purse that looked like it had seen better days, but was obviously cared for. "Miss Carter," he said impulsively, "why did you apply for this job?" Melody paused in gathering her papers. "Honestly, because I need the work. But also because I want to prove to myself that I can do something challenging and important. Even though everyone told you I was impossible to work for?" A small smile played at the corners of Melody's mouth, especially because they told me that. "I've never been one to back down from a challenge." After she left, Gabriel sat alone in his office, staring out at the city lights. Melody Carter was unlike anyone he had ever hired. She was clumsy and inexperienced, yet she had lasted longer than assistants with impressive credentials. She made mistakes, but she also showed initiative and dedication that went far beyond her job description. The unexpected visitor Friday morning brought an unexpected complication in the form of Rebecca Stone, Gabriel's former fiancée. Rebecca swept into the office like a force of nature, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor, her perfectly styled blonde hair and flawless makeup creating an aura of sophisticated elegance that made everyone in the office take notice. Melody looked up from her desk as Rebecca approached, clearly uncertain how to handle this situation. "I'm here to see Gabriel," Rebecca announced. her voice carrying the confidence of someone who was used to getting what she wanted without question. "Do you have an appointment?" Melody asked politely. "Mr. Winters has a very full schedule today," Rebecca laughed, a sound like crystal chimes that somehow managed to be condescending. "Darling, I don't need an appointment. Gabriel and I have a very special relationship." Before Melody could respond, Gabriel's office door opened and he stepped out, his expression immediately hardening when he saw Rebecca. "What are you doing here, Rebecca? Is that any way to greet an old friend?" Rebecca smiled, stepping closer. "To Gabriel, I was in the neighborhood and thought we might have lunch. You know, catch up on old times." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "I'm busy." "Oh, come now. Surely you can spare an hour for me." Rebecca's gaze shifted to Melody, taking in her simple dress and modest appearance with obvious dismissal. "I'm sure your secretary can reschedule whatever little meetings you have this afternoon," Assistant Melody corrected quietly. "And Mr. Winters has a very important presentation this afternoon that can't be rescheduled." Rebecca turned to look at Melody more closely, her perfect eyebrows rising in amusement. "How sweet. Gabriel, you've always had such interesting taste in staff." Gabriel felt a surge of anger at Rebecca's tone, though he couldn't quite understand why Melody's dignity seemed to matter to him. "Miss Carter's right. I don't have time for lunch." "Dinner then," Rebecca persisted, moving closer to Gabriel and placing a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. "I have some exciting news to share with you, about us." Gabriel removed her hand from his arm. "There is no us, Rebecca. There hasn't been for 2 years. But darling, you can't still be upset about that silly little misunderstanding. I've had time to think about what really matters, and I realize now that we belong together." Melody watched this exchange with growing discomfort. Not because of any romantic feelings for Gabriel, because she could see how tense and unhappy the situation was making him. Without fully understanding why, she found herself speaking. "Up, Mr. Winters. Your 11 o'clock appointment just called to confirm they'll be arriving early. Perhaps you should prepare for that meeting." It was a lie. There was no 11 o'clock appointment. But Melody had sensed that Gabriel needed an escape from whatever complicated history he shared with this elegant, intimidating woman. Gabriel looked at Melody with surprise and something that might have been gratitude. "Yes, of course. Rebecca, I'm sorry, but I really do need to prepare for this meeting." Rebecca's smile faltered for the first time since her arrival. "Fine, but Gabriel, we really do need to talk. I'll call you later." After Rebecca left, the office seemed to exhale collectively. Gabriel stood by Melody's desk, studying her face. There was no 11 o'clock appointment," he said quietly. "No, sir. I'm sorry for lying, but you seemed like you needed an excuse to end that conversation." Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. When was the last time someone had tried to protect him from an uncomfortable situation without being asked? When had anyone shown such intuitive understanding of his needs? "Thank you," he said finally. It was the first time he had thanked Melody for anything, and the simple words seemed to surprise them both. The realization that afternoon Gabriel found himself watching Melody more closely than usual. She handled phone calls with grace, managed a minor crisis with the catering for an important meeting, and somehow managed to make his impossible schedule work seamlessly. But it was the small things that caught his attention. The way she always made sure his coffee was the perfect temperature. How she had learned to anticipate his needs before he even expressed them. The genuine warmth in her voice when she spoke with clients, even the difficult ones. Around 4 o'clock, Gabriel overheard Melody on a phone call that made him pause outside her desk. "I understand you're frustrated, Mrs. Davidson," Melody was saying patiently. "Let me see what I can do to resolve this situation for you." Gabriel recognized the name. Mrs. Davidson was the elderly widow of one of their former clients, and she had been calling for weeks about some paperwork related to her late husband's account. Previous assistants had transferred her calls endlessly or told her the matter was outside their scope. I've been looking into this," Melody continued, "and I think I found the issue. The documents you need were filed under your husband's middle name instead of his first name. I can have copies prepared and sent to you this afternoon. No, Mrs. Davidson, there's no charge for this service. I'm just happy we could get this sorted out for you." Gabriel listened as Melody spent another 10 minutes on the call, patiently explaining the paperwork and making sure Mrs. Davidson understood everything. When she finally hung up, Gabriel approached her desk. "That wasn't your responsibility," he said, Melody looked up at him, worried she had overstepped. I know, sir, but she's been calling for weeks, and it seemed like something we could easily fix. I hope that was all right. Gabriel stared at her, trying to understand this person who spent her own time solving problems that weren't technically her job, who lied to help him escape uncomfortable situations, who apologized for her mistakes while taking immediate action. To fix them, Miss Carter, he said slowly. Why are you really here? Melody looked confused by the question. I told you. I need the job. No, Gabriel said, sitting down in the chair beside her desk. Lots of people need jobs. Why are you here, in this specific position, putting up with my impossible demands and unreasonable behavior? Ow! Melody was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Because, she said finally, I think there's more to you than the impossible boss everyone talks about. And I think there's more to me than the clumsy girl who spills coffee on important clients. Gabriel felt something shift inside his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite name. For the first time in years, someone was seeing past the walls he had built around himself. For reasons he couldn't fully understand, he wanted her to keep looking. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He was falling for his secretary. The clumsy, stubborn, completely inappropriate secretary who had somehow managed to see through his defenses when no one else even bothered to try. As he sat there looking at Melody's earnest green eyes, Gabriel understood that everything was about to change. The question was whether he was brave enough to let it. The confession, the weekend passed in a blur of confusion for Gabriel. He found himself thinking about Melody at the strangest moments while reviewing financial reports. During his morning run, even while trying to sleep, Monday morning couldn't come fast enough, yet he dreaded it at the same time. When he arrived at the office, Gabriel was surprised to find Melody's desk empty. For a moment, panic shot through him. Had she finally had enough? Had he pushed too hard with his demands and criticism? Then he heard voices from the conference room and realized Melody was there, setting up for the day's first meeting. Through the glass walls, he could see her arranging materials and testing the presentation. Equipment. She moved with a confidence he hadn't noticed before, her earlier clumsiness seemingly replaced by purposeful efficiency. Good morning, Mr. Winters, she said as he approached. I came in early to make sure everything was perfect for the Bradley Industries presentation. I know how important this contract is. Gabriel nodded, but his attention was caught by something different about Melody's appearance. She was wearing a new dress, still modest but more sophisticated than her usual attire. Her hair was styled differently too, swept back in a way that emphasized the elegant line of her neck. You look, Gabriel began, then stopped himself. The setup looks excellent, thank you. But as the morning progressed, Gabriel found himself increasingly distracted. During the Bradley Industries meeting, he caught himself watching Melody as she took notes and managed the presentation materials. When she smiled at one of the clients, Gabriel felt an unexpected stab of something that might have been jealousy. After, the meeting ended successfully, with Bradley Industries agreeing to a preliminary contract. Gabriel retreated to his office, trying to regain his composure. He had built his business empire by maintaining emotional distance, by never letting personal feelings interfere with professional judgment. But Melody was threatening that carefully constructed barrier. A soft knock on his door interrupted his brooding. Mr. Winters. James Fletcher from Fletcher Enterprises is here to see you. He says it's urgent. Gabriel looked up to see Melody standing in his doorway, her expression concerned. Behind her stood James Fletcher, a rival CEO known for his aggressive business tactics and his habit of trying to poach talent from other companies. Gabriel, James said, pushing past Melody into the office with his characteristic lack of regard for social niceties. We need to talk. Gabriel stood immediately. On guard, James Fletcher never visited unless he wanted something, and whatever he wanted usually meant trouble for Gabriel's company. Miss Carter, could you give us some privacy? Gabriel said. As Melody closed the door behind her, Gabriel turned to face James. What do you want, Fletcher? James smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Straight to the point. I like that about you, Gabriel. It's one of the reasons I'm here with a proposition. I'm listening. I want to buy Winters Technologies. I'm prepared to make an offer that will make you very wealthy, even by your standards. Gabriel's expression didn't change. My company isn't for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price, James replied, settling into a chair without being invited. But I'm not just here about the business. I'm also interested in your assistant. Gabriel felt ice form in his veins. Excuse me, Miss Carter. She's quite impressive. I've been watching her handle some difficult clients, and I think she'd be perfect for a position at my company. Executive assistant to the CEO, significant salary increase, full benefits, the works. You've been watching her? Gabriel's voice was dangerously quiet. James waved dismissively. I make it my business to know about talented people in our industry. Miss Carter has potential that's being wasted here. She could go far with the right guidance. Gabriel moved around his desk, his hands clenched into fists. Stay away from my assistant. Your assistant? James raised an eyebrow. That's interesting. I've never known you to be possessive about staff before, unless there's something more personal involved. The implication in James's voice made Gabriel's anger spike. But before he could respond, there was another knock on the door. Come in, Gabriel called, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Melody entered, carrying a folder. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call from the Morrison Group. They need an immediate response about the contract modifications. Gabriel noticed that Melody's hands were shaking slightly, and he realized she had probably overheard at least part of the conversation through the thin office walls. Take a message, Gabriel said. I'll call them back in 10 minutes. But James Fletcher had other ideas. He stood and turned to Melody with his most charming smile. Miss Carter, isn't it? I'm James Fletcher. Was just telling Gabriel here about an exciting opportunity that might interest you. Melody glanced between the two men, clearly sensing the tension in the room. I'm sorry, Mr. Fletcher, but I'm quite happy with my current position. You haven't even heard the offer yet, James persisted. Executive assistant position, starting salary of $100,000, plus benefits and stock options. Think about it. You could have your own office, your own staff, real responsibilities. Gabriel watched Melody's face carefully, looking for any sign that James's offer tempted her. A salary of $100,000 would be life-changing for someone in Melody's position, but Melody's response surprised them both. Thank you for the offer, Mr. Fletcher, but I'm not interested. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to handle that urgent call. After Melody left, James turned back to Gabriel with amusement. Well, that's interesting. She turned down a fortune. To stay here with you? I wonder what you're offering her that's worth more than financial security. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Our business is concluded, Fletcher. My assistant isn't interested in your offer, and my company isn't for sale. This isn't over, Gabriel, James said as he headed for the door. I always get what I want, eventually. After James left, Gabriel sat alone in his office, his mind racing. Melody had turned down an offer that would have tripled her salary, an offer that would have solved all her financial problems. Why? The declaration that evening, Gabriel found himself staying late again, but this time it wasn't because of work. He was waiting for the office to empty so he could have a private conversation with Melody, when the last of the other employees had left. Gabriel emerged from his office to find Melody still at her desk, organizing files for the next day. Carter, he said quietly, we need to talk. Melody looked up, her expression guarded. If this is about Mr. Fletcher's offer, I meant what I said. I'm not interested. Why? Gabriel asked, sitting down across from her desk. $100,000 is more money than you've probably ever imagined having. Melody was quiet for a moment, her fingers fidgeting with a pen. Can I ask you something, Mr. Winters? Gabriel, he said. When we're alone, call me Gabriel. The use of his first name seemed to surprise her, but she nodded. Gabriel then. Why do you care whether I take another job or not? A few weeks ago, you were ready to fire me for spilling coffee? Gabriel realized this was the moment of truth. He could give her a professional answer about her value as an employee, or he could tell her the truth that had been building inside him for days. Because, he said slowly, somewhere between the spilled papers and the coffee disasters and your stubborn refusal to give up, I started falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge that could either connect them or collapse under the weight of their impossibility. Melody stared at him, her green eyes wide with shock. You what? Gabriel stood up and began pacing, running his hands through his hair. I know how this sounds. I know I've been impossible to work for, demanding and critical and completely unreasonable. I know you deserve better than someone who's spent weeks making your life difficult. Gabriel, but you've changed everything, he continued, unable to stop now that the words had started flowing. You see things I miss. You care about people I've forgotten how to care about. You make me want to be better than I am? Melody stood up slowly, her expression unreadable. You think you love me? I know I love you, Gabriel said, stopping his pacing to look directly at her. I love your determination when everyone told you to give up. I love how you turned disasters into solutions. I love that you spent your own money to replace a shirt. That wasn't your fault. I love that you lied to rescue me from an uncomfortable conversation with my ex-fiancé. Tears were forming in Melody's eyes, but Gabriel couldn't tell if they were happy tears or heartbroken ones. I love that you turned down a job offer that would have changed your life because you believed in something more important than money, Gabriel continued. And I love that you're probably going to tell me I'm crazy for thinking this could work. Between us, Melody wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. You were crazy, she said softly. Completely, utterly crazy. Gabriel felt his heart sink. He had known this was a mistake, had known that his feelings were inappropriate and impossible. He started to turn away, but Melody's next words stopped him. But I'm crazy too, she whispered, because I think I love you back. Gabriel spun around to face her, hardly daring to believe what he had heard. You do? Been trying not to? Melody admitted. You're my boss. You're wealthy and sophisticated and completely out of my league. But underneath all that armor you wear, I see someone who's lonely and tired of pretending he doesn't need anyone. Gabriel closed the distance between them in 2 quick steps, taking her hands in his. Melody, I need you to know that this changes everything. If we do this, I can't be your boss anymore. It wouldn't be appropriate. Melody looked up at him, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Are you firing me? I'm promoting you, Gabriel said. To partner. In business, in life, if you'll have me. Partner. Melody's eyes widened. Gabriel, I don't have the experience or credentials to be a partner in your company. You have something more valuable than credentials, Gabriel replied. You have heart and instinct and the ability to see solutions where others see only problems. I want to teach you the business side. I want to watch you grow and succeed. I want to build something together. Melody searched his face, looking for any sign that this was some kind of elaborate joke or test. Instead, she saw sincerity and vulnerability in his gray eyes that took her breath away. What about Rebecca? She asked. She seemed to think you two had a future together. Gabriel's expression hardened slightly. Rebecca is part of my past. She left me 2 years ago because she decided I wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't moving fast enough in the right social circles. She's only back now because she's heard about my success. And you're sure you're over her? Gabriel cupped Melody's face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that were still clinging to her lashes. Melody, what I felt for Rebecca was never love. It was convenience, mutual ambition to people who looked good together on paper. What I feel for you is completely different. You make me want to be worthy of your faith in me, Gabriel, Melody whispered, leaning into his touch. Say. Yes, Gabriel said softly. Say you'll take a chance on us. Say you'll let me show you how amazing you really are. Instead of answering with words, Melody rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was a gentle kiss, tentative at first, then deeper as Gabriel's arms came around her, holding her as if she might disappear if he let go. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads resting against each other. Is that a yes? Gabriel asked, his voice rough with emotion. That's a yes, Melody replied, smiling through her tears. But Gabriel, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that you'll still challenge me. I don't want to be treated like I'm fragile or incapable. I want to earn my place in your company and in your life.